In a modern society, every human being, whether he is highly educated or normally educated, has to have a clarity, a clear idea about his emotional pattern and his emotional culture. If that is the case of an individual, that is the case of an organization, the management should have its own analysis and an idea with all clear perspective about its emotional culture. So managing your emotional culture is a necessity in the modern society for emancipation of an individual or a manager or any organization. So here, after the advancement of the communication systems all over the world and lot of interaction between the sensibilities and patterns of thinking between various continents, we have to blend certain sensibilities with our Indian sensibility in order to build up and manage our emotional culture. Especially in an expanding organization, this is a primary necessity. Blending Western sense and Indian sensibility, this is what is being discussed quite a lot in the sociologists and several management experts at this particular juncture of the society's interaction and emancipation. First of all, we have to discover the difficulties and pleasures through tangled relationships and capturing the shifts culture of the organization. In the culture of the organization, there will be a lot of shifts as the organization grows from one phase to one phase in the process of expansion. Most leaders focus on how employees think and behave, but feelings matter just as much. Most other people realize how central emotions are to building the right culture. They tend to focus on cognitive culture, the shared intellectual values. I repeat these two, which are very, very important. Cognitive culture and the shared intellectual values, norms, artifacts, and assumptions, and set the overall tone to how employees think and behave at work. This is a sociological study that every management has to conduct or every organization has to conduct repeatedly and in a phased manner to understand the change in the employee's thinking process and what it had its impact on the behavioral patterns of the working person, the managers, and even the top management system. Before leaving work each day, employees at ubiquity retirement plus savings press a button in the lobby. They are not punching out, not in the traditional sense anyway. They are registering their emotions. We must remember that every day when they are punching out, they are going out by registering some emotions in their mind. They have several buttons to choose from. A smiley face, if they felt happy at the work that day, a faraway face, a frowny face, if they felt sad, and so on. This may sound like a HR gimmick, but it is not. It is actually a management study and an instrument forced satisfaction. The team with the most smiley faces wins, but it is neither. Neither only smiley faces with ubiquitous, with artificial, hypocritic, but at the same time not sad faces with lot of sadness in their heart about the process of work. And ubiquity is using the data collects to understand what motivates employees to learn what makes them feel a sense of belonging and excitement at work. Several organizations are starting to do the same. Some one that record how much fun people are having. Some hire technology consultants who specialize in the monthly, weekly, daily, or even hourly tracking of the methods and how the behavioral pattern of the workforce in the organizational campus or even the managers in the organizational campus are reacting, and they are expressing it out about their innermost core feelings of that particular day's work or the working style which they are undergoing in an organization. Unfortunately, though these organizations are in the minority, most companies pay little attention to how employees are should be feeling. They do not realize how central emotions are building the right way, a right perspective, and a right culture in the organization. When people talk about corporate, when people talk about typically referring, there are two things which we have to remember: cognitive culture, the shared intellectual values, norms, assumptions that serve as a guide for the group of people to thrive in an organization. Cognitive culture sets the tone that how employees think and behave at work. For instance, how customer focused, innovative, team oriented, competitive they are and they should be, and what is being the expectation of the top management. Cognitive culture is undeniably important to any organization's success because it is only part of the story. We must know cognitive culture is only a part of the story. The other crucial part is what we are discussing today in our topic is that emotional culture. This is the critical part. The shared effective values, norms, several things are very important in assessing the people at the time of work when they are expressed. Cognitive culture is often conveyed verbally, whereas emotional culture tends to be conveyed through non-verbal cues such as body language and facial expressions. Despite Renaissance scholarship and the revolution in the scholarship on the organizational management, the ways and emotions shape people behavior. At work, emotional culture is rarely managed as deliberately as cognitive culture. Here I would like to repeat that emotional culture, the management of emotional culture is being neglected by the top management, and they are more concentrating on the cognitive culture, the aspect of a particular human being, but not the totality of the human being to take into consideration for analysis in the best interest of the organization. In research over the past decade found that emotional culture influences employee satisfaction, burnout, teamwork, and even hard measures such as financial performance and absenteeism. Countless empirical studies show the significant impact of emotions on how people perform on tasks, how engaged and creative they are. The positive emotions are consistently associated with better performance, quality, and customer service. This holds true across roles, industries, at various organizational levels from top to bottom. Every organization has an emotional culture, even if it is one of suppression. I repeat, even if it is one of an organization with a suppressive attitude and suppressive methodology, it has a culture, it has an emotional culture. So when the managers ignore emotional culture, they are glossing over the vital part what makes people and organizations. They may understand its importance in theory, but can still shy away from emotions at work. Leaders expect to influence how people think and behave on the job, but they may feel ill equipped to understand and actively manage how employees feel and express their emotions at work. Every organization has an emotional culture, even if it is one with highly suppressive methodology. So, how to delve beneath the surface? Some companies have begun explicitly include emotions in their management principles. For instance, Pepsi and some other Southwest Airlines and Whole Foods Market and etc. Several great organizations also involved in this particular process of delving beneath the surface of a human being and understanding the emotional cultural pattern that every worker had in an organization from top to bottom, from CEO down to the level of a normal worker. To get a comprehensive read, to get a comprehensive cue on an organizational emotional culture and then deliberately manage it, if you have to make sure what is confidential, what is codified in mission statements and on corporate badges is also enacted in the micro comments of a daily worker whenever he is coming out of the workplace. Facial expressions and body language are very powerful, equal powerful to be analyzed. If the manager consistently comes to work looking angry, he may cultivate a culture of anger. The phenomenon is surprisingly common. In one study, it is pointed out by several management experts for comfortable expression, anger than joy on the job is not good. You can imagine it will have its own effects on the organizational process. Edgar Sitton, a professor emeritus of MIT all around school, has shown with his popular three levels of culture model. This three-level culture model is very popular. Most deeply entrenched elements of organizational culture, the least was emotional culture in action. Emotional culture will have its own impact and it will show in the actions of the organization and mass. If there is a culture of joy, let us begin with one that is often clearly articulated and actively reinforced management. That will definitely, a culture of a joy is available in the organization with a due blend of most sensibilities in every human being working in an organization from top to bottom. Then the culture of joy can be definitely created. Which this requires continuous tracking of emotions because they tend to change in every phase of expansion and every phase of a new slogan taken by the organization. The playful spirit of the top permeates where management tactics, special outings, celebrations, rewards, and there are several means to manage this emotional pattern. All this shall be done in service to an emotional culture that makes intuitive sense. Converting emotional culture into an intuitive sense is definitely in the interest of the larger interest of the organization. So management made joy an explicit cultural value, calling it pause for fun. There must be always pause for fun. This is a signal that it was important outcome to track, just like productivity, creativity, and other elements of performance. I repeat this. This shall be signal as important outcome, just like productivity, creativity, and other elements of performance. A culture of compassionate love. If organization can create a culture of compassionate love with all good emotional pattern, managing the emotional culture of the organization, emotion examined extensively, that common in life but rarely mentioned by name in the organizations is compassionate love. A love with compassion. To quote properly, there is an excellent quote about the education. No university can be regarded as a true university unless it sends out men and women who are not only educated but whose hearts are filled with compassion for the suffering humanity. This is the emotional pattern. This is a cultural pattern that has to be developed by every organization through several means, through interactions, through training, through culturing, through lecturing, through interacting by the mentors, and through several paths, this has to be developed. The culture of compassionate love is ultimately the panacea for an organization to manage the emotional culture, emotional pattern of the workman. The message seems to be getting through when asked to describe colleagues at the firm. One junior Analysts call them my friends. Some people call them my workers. These two expressions itself had a lot of gulf, lot of difference in looking at the people, looking at the colleagues, looking at the organization. Finally, two things I would like to communicate. A culture of fear cannot win the hearts of the workman top to bottom. However, high may be pay scale in that organization. However, high may be their organizational capacity. An organization may be getting high level of profits. It does not mean that creating fear of culture can take it for a long way for a long time. So what happens when emotions intersect? This is what on which finally we have to concentrate. Clearly, fear can be toxic, but even positive emotions can have misintended side effects if given too much sway. In a culture of unmitigated joy, fun might impede work. In a culture of love, where everyone feels like family, employees might struggle to have honest conversations but problems. To quote one person who interviewed, people do not want to talk about conflict because they don't want to get in the way of the love. This will become a negative effect. That should not be done. There must be a compassionate love with due ventilation, with due doors open to express their conflicting view, to express their own feelings in a very, very free way. There are several reasons for both emotional cultures to be strong. Joviality helped teams coordinate better on the job, but at the same time, seriousness with all emotional commitment to the job has to be given to lead the organization, duly understanding the individual's weaknesses and the, the evolutionary pattern of the individuals with whom you are working, and in the evolutionary process at what level that individual worker or individual manager, that individual top brass has been evolved to a level of extent in the enlightening field of managing the emotions and the culture, managing the emotional culture in a beautiful way. Like any other emotion, compassionate love can lead to varying outcomes depending on what it is paired with. For the firefighters, it had a tempering effect on the joviality and teasing, which if taken to extremes. So nothing should be taken extreme, could become isolating and hurtful. This should not allow even the creation of a culture of a joy. This should not be allowed to the extreme. That beautiful way of balancing, that beautiful way of blending with all Indian sensibility and all Western methodology depends on the management's commitment to the organizational methods and analysis, and the management's commitment in training and development and learning and development that only can take the organization front forward. Thank you very much.